Well, hello again, my friends. It's Bradley J. With my special guest, Bob Clark, and Bob is going to teach us why we should probably never use the phrase "begs the question." Now, there are places where you could use it, but I'm guessing you're never going to run across that. Play it safe, and don't use the phrase "begs the question." Now, who's
Yeah.
Bob Clark? Well, I used to work at a talk radio station as a talk radio host at WBZ News Radio 1030, and one of my great pleasures was to come out during the break early in the morning, like maybe 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and Bob Clark, our guest, would be sitting at his desk, his news writer's desk, along with some of the other finest news writers in the land at WBZ, writing copy that the anchors would read. Those anchors included Deb Lawler and Joe Matthew. And actually, what we're talking about was a pet peeve of Joe Matthew's as well. I made the mistake and was immediately fallen upon, I think probably by the two of them, but by one of them for saying it wrong. I think Joe brought it up and told me that Bob Clark told him and explained it to him, so I went and saw Bob. So this is going to be fun. We're going to talk about why you should never use the phrase, or probably never use the phrase, begs the question, and some other things that pop up a lot that are incorrect. And if you're a person who wants to get a job, being able to speak and write correctly is a big deal. To get into law school, for example, you have to write an essay. I guess to get into a lot of colleges, one has to write an essay. And if you use incorrect, if you write incorrectly, it's not going to help you. So we are performing and providing a service today. So now, Bob, how do you do?
I'm fine.
All
Brett.
right.
Thank you. I am going to throw you a little curveball here, though, because after we talked on the phone privately last night, I did a little research on begs the question.
All right.
And some of the online dictionaries, like Merriam-Webster, say that the way that begs the question is commonly used is acceptable, and is in fact.
So
the
is that distressing to you?
definition.
Is that distressing to you?
I'm sorry.
Is that distressing to you?
No. There are many more distressing things to worry about than that. But it's commonly used like this. For example, you can be talking about the MBTA is going to shut down the Orange Line for a month, and that begs the question why they didn't do it during the pandemic when fewer people were riding the Orange Line.
Right.
That's how it's commonly used. Now, I was always taught, and I've argued with many people saying that that is not the correct usage of begs the question. And my example of begging the question goes this way. If I say to you, so-and-so is really stupid, and you say to me, well, why do you say that? And I come back and say, because he's dumb. I am begging the question when I do that. I am not answering. I am not making an argument for what I've said. I'm just assuming that it's correct. And
It's a tough thing to explain.
yeah, it's a tough thing to explain. Apparently, it goes back years and years to Aristotle and logic.
Right.
Stuff that's way over my head.
It's a kind of circular logic that does not answer the question, and therefore the question is still begging to be answered.
Yes, yeah,
Not begging to be asked.
yeah. It's circular reasoning.
So
Anyway,
so person A is an idiot. Why is he an idiot? Because he's dumb. It doesn't explain. It doesn't answer the question. It just
exactly. It doesn't make any argument.
it doesn't give an example for one thing. It's
Yes,
just
right.
another word. So
Yeah.
if you really wanted to be cool, you would not use the phrase begs the question unless you used it correctly. But in this land we live in, if you used it correctly, you would probably be criticized for using it incorrectly. It's like, that's not what it means. It means the question should naturally pops up.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting? And I kind of am distressed that a lame, lazy use of language becomes acceptable.
Right. Well, and apparently that's what has happened in the case of begs the question. People use it so often, um, to, meaning invites the question, or raises the question,
Right.
begs the question. According to Merriam-Webster online, that's a completely acceptable use of the
I don't
term.
know if I like Merriam-Webster anymore.
Yeah, and the old-fashioned begs the question that I tried to explain, is kind of dismissed as being very formal, too formal, and
I see.
kind of archaic.
Oh,
So
I see.
I'm not going to argue this begs the question anymore.
Oh my God. So this didn't turn
I'm
out
giving
at all.
up.
This didn't turn out at all like either of us expected.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you,
I mean,
you don't want to
I
claim.
won't use it myself. I will say, raises the question or invites the question,
So you're going to relax
but
and
I'm not going to.
and let it go.
Yeah, I'm going to let it go. I'm not going to tell people that the way they use begs the question is wrong.
Well, that's going to be great.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can it's going to relieve a lot of stress for me.
Absolutely.
All
Yeah.
right.
But the language, constantly evolves. It constantly changes over time. There are things that people say today that, would not have been accepted 2 or 3
Right.
years ago.
Right.
You know, I think of, how sometimes in the written form, you see these old documents like from colonial times, and the letter, and I may be getting this backwards, but the letter S looks like an F.
Yes. Oh
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Well, I mean, that's just the way it was 200 years ago, but we don't do it that way anymore,
Right.
you know? And it doesn't mean the old way was wrong. It's just, it's fallen out of regular use.
Right. Okay. So my brother has always been a word person, and now he's doubled down and reading linguistic books. So I'm always either getting praised or criticized for my use of various words, which is good, keeps me sharp. And one of the big, there are a few biggies that still are haven't changed.
Yeah.
And so we're going to go through those. And one of the most common errors is the use of whom, is the decision on how to whether to use who or whom.
Right. Right.
So you want to run through an explanation of which one we
Yeah.
should use, and maybe a rule we can go by.
Well, the rule that, again, I was doing some research online last night, and the very simple explanation that I found is this, and I will read it to you. If you can replace the word with he or she, then you should use who. For example, who is at the door? You could say she is at the door or he is at the door. You wouldn't say her or him is at the door.
So if it's he or she, it's who.
Who? Right. Who?
Okay.
Who is a subject,
Mm-hmm.
and whom is an object. For example, Bill wrote a letter to a pen pal whom he had never met.
Because he had never met him.
Exactly. He has never met him. You would never say he has never met he.
Right.
The whom thing, I see it all the time incorrectly now. And it's not just in newspapers. I even see it on magazine covers, when they have like a month between issues, and then they'll say whom on the cover. Who are you going to vote for? Well, that sounds right, but really it should be whom are you going to vote for?
Because I am going to vote for him and not
Vote for him. Yeah.
he. Okay, good.
Well,
That's a tricky one.
that's a
And
tricky one.
if you're ever in a situation where an infinitive precedes it, like to, I mean, infinitive, is that a state? Is that a correct phrase? Infinitive? To.
Yeah.
Okay. To whom? It's always to whom, not to
To
who.
whom? Right. Yeah. Not to whom.
Now,
To whom are you going to give this book?
now, do you see who's popped up in the corner here
Yeah.
as a commenter?
Yeah.
Ed Golden.
Someone we know.
Yeah. Ed
Okay.
Golden, also WBZ news writer.
That's
and,
right.
and so much more.
Yeah.
He says
And
affect.
Ed apparently can't keep track of the difference between affect and effect.
I actually have problems with that myself. That's
Yeah.
fuzzy
I
to me.
would say to Ed that that's probably a function of his age that he can't. Ed is like 2 years older, 2 months older than I am, so I always tease him about being older than I.
Okay. So, well, what's the formula
The
for
difference,
affect and effect?
um, I have to think about it actually. Effect is, well, I was going to say effect is a noun, but affect can also be used as a noun. You can have an effect on someone
Well, Ed, tell us.
with an E.
Maybe
Maybe
we should give that a rest and have Ed give us Ed, look up the answer. He says he almost didn't get hired. He's got to know because he almost lost a job because of it. So Ed,
there you go. Yeah.
give us the actual answer. And John Mack says, I like the subject. Okay,
Good.
As opposed to the predicate. Ha ha. He didn't write that. I did. Okay. Related to who and whom is who and that.
Yeah,
Sometimes,
this is something I've been seeing a lot lately, mostly on the sports pages. And I hate to pick on poor Alex Cora, who's already having a bad enough year. But this is something that he seems to say a lot. He'll say something like, well, we're looking for a pitcher that can give us 5 innings, or he'll say, we've got this outfielder that can hit 20 home runs a year. No, don't say that. Say who. It's an outfielder who can hit 25 home runs a year, or a pitcher who can give us 5 innings. I'm seeing that one more and more.
okay. So
Ed still doesn't know, he says.
Ed still doesn't know. Jeez. So here's what I have online. Affect versus effect. How to pick the right one. Here's another way to remember when to use affect and effect. A is for action, affect. E is for the result, effect. So I am going to affect him. And the effect was that I broke his leg,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
A for the action, the doing. E for the result.
Yes. That sounds good.
All right, Ed.
Hey,
Well, Ed, remember that at your next Associated Press job interview. Oh, Ed has effect as a noun, affect related to the verbs, affect related to the
I think it means
verb.
the verb. Yeah.
So is that true? I mean, effect is the noun. Affect is okay. Yeah. Okay, that's consistent with what
I tried to affect something, but it had no effect.
Okay, good. Well, my brother will be proud that we addressed that. Next up is one that I had not thought about. I think I tend to say it correctly just by accident, luckily. But that is whether versus whether or not.
Right.
Okay.
Whether or not is, you generally don't need the or not on there. if I'm asking you whether you want to go to the ball game tomorrow, I don't have to say I'm not ask. I don't have to ask whether or not you're going to the ball game tomorrow.
Right.
The word whether can
The uncertainty is built in to weather.
exactly, yeah, weather can draw a yes answer or a no answer. So you don't have to say whether or not. People seem to think they have to say whether or not, just in case the other guy uh, says no. You know.
Right. So back to the language evolving. I mean, some might say the evolution is neither good nor bad, but there are fewer and fewer words being used. I think we've dumbed down to just very few words, like awesome. Nobody bothers to think of another descriptive term. Oh, that's awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. It's so tiresome. Anybody that can actually think of another descriptive word shines and seems like a genius compared to the masses. Do you have any pet overused words? You must.
Yeah, I think that's generally true, but I think oftentimes a simpler word works just as well as a longer kind of puffed up word.
Well, I'm not
I'm
promoting
thinking like
puffed up
I'm
words,
thinking,
just a different one.
yeah, I'm thinking like use and utilize.
Oh, right.
People will also say, well, we've got to utilize this so and so. Just
All
say
right. How about this? At this point in time, you could just say now.
now. Yeah.
At this point in time.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But I still have a beef with amazing and awesome. Just, you could say outstanding, extraordinary. There are a bunch of words that make you sound like a real Phi Beta Kappa. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Oh, I'm, I guess I'm getting old and crotchety, but
Unbelievable.
as is my right to do, I think.
Yeah.
Let's
People
see.
people use the word unbelievable all the time.
Oh,
Well, there aren't too many things that are really unbelievable, you know?
right.
I can believe almost anything, you know? And it really bothers me when I hear this on a newscast, when somebody will say, well, it was an unbelievable accident.
Well, then why is it news if it was unbelievable?
Yeah, it's, yeah.
We want just
It's
the
yeah,
facts.
exactly. If it's
We want the
unbelievable,
believable stuff.
why are we telling if the story is unbelievable, why are we telling it? Shouldn't we be telling believable stories? You know?
All right, are you going to defend the use of the word literally all the time? People say stuff like, his eyes were literally popping out of his head,
Yeah.
when in fact they weren't.
No, no, no. Literally means, yeah, they really were popping out of his head, you know, literally.
Like they're dangling on his cheek,
Yeah.
just hanging there by the root.
Yeah.
So, hey,
Yeah,
can you talk
people
about your job? I always wondered about it. Was it difficult? Was it easy? Was it hard? What was it like? Describe your morning at WBZ?
Oh, well,
I saw you guys there, but I didn't
yeah,
I knew in a very larger sense what you were doing. You were writing stories, but there's much more specific things. When somebody works there, or at least they used to have to take a writing test. You had to be tested to
yeah,
show that
yeah.
you could do the job. Like what did the test consist of, and what were the challenges?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember being given a writing test by the news director at the time, and I won't mention it by name, only because uh, you'll see why. He gave me some stories to write, like he gave me some wire copy or something, and said, "Yeah, write up some stories." And I did something. I think I wrote a story, maybe a transition from one story to the next, that wasn't a complete sentence. You know, the way people often on TV or radio will say, "A real hot day outside." Well,
Right.
It's not a complete sentence. So anyway, the news director said to me, "Oh no, we don't write that way. We use complete sentences only." And then when I started working in the job, uh, people wrote that way all the time. You know,
Right.
so
So your job was to
so
write
I
it
did.
more like they would speak it, are likely to speak it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's the key thing in writing for broadcasts is that you want to write uh, largely the way people speak. You know, I mean, you have to leave out the f bombs and
Right. And I suppose it was important to know which anchor you're writing for because there's quite a difference between anchors.
yeah, that's true. I One reason I enjoyed working with Joe Matthew in the morning was that we were on the same page. It seemed. In fact, he told me one time that even when I screwed something up, he knew he could figure out what I really meant, and he could correct it on the fly on the air. I think that's pretty extraordinary. But yeah, when I wrote a story, uh, I in my head I tried to imagine the person reading it, and I think that helped a lot. And
News anchors do work differently. Joe Matthew is very, uh, I mean, he could actually, maybe they can all do this, but you could go in and talk to him about something, another story, and you might have 7 seconds to chat, and then he has to go immediately, blam, back into the story and know exactly what he was talking about before.
yeah,
I just don't, that was amazing stuff to me.
yeah, yeah. The the hardest thing about working at BZ Radio was that I had to be there at 3 o'clock in the morning to write for the morning drive
So you
news.
didn't like that?
Uh, no, and I did that. I would I get up around 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
Get there by 3 because I wanted to shower and get something to eat.
yeah,
So by 7 o'clock, the first few hours are more intense anyway, and then as you get to the end of the shift, you're recycling a lot of stuff, and the pace kind of slows down. By 7 o'clock, I was falling asleep at my desk.
yeah.
And and I was going to bed at like 8:30 at night and getting up at 1:30. That's only 5 hours sleep. That's really not enough. And I
So,
was fighting to stay awake by the end of the shift.
so your job as a news writer is to take information and make it into something that is easily conveyable by the anchor. What were your
Yeah,
sources? It became initially it was the wire. You'd rip it off and take this dry copy from AP, like we did in
yeah,
college. Rip,
yeah,
and then you'd transform that into something a little more delicious.
yeah. Well, that's pretty much it. You know. And the thing I always tried to remember is that listening to a newscast on the radio or television, the the listener only gets one shot at it. And if they don't get it the first time, uh, uh, whoever's reading the news has moved on to the next thing already. It's not like a newspaper when you can read a paragraph 2 or 3 times uh, to be sure you really understand it. Um, Listening to broadcast, you had to understand it the first time. Although, and you can argue, well, you can tape the newscast and go back and watch it again. But then,
Right.
you
Well, I
know,
really,
the point is,
it was
it has to be. I hate to use the word simple, but it has to be, clear the first time, and conversational. Try to be conversational,
and
and
it has to be clear so that you can understand it while you're in the car, concentrating on not crashing. You have the noise of
right,
traffic, so it has to be
yeah,
super clear.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
All right.
That was the first thing I always tried to remember is that you tried to be clear and concise. And, you didn't want to use too many big words that a lot of people didn't know.
Right.
Um,
Well, who's going to be thrilled to see this is Joe Matthew, because he was always one of your big boosters. He always figured that you were one of the linchpins of keeping that place on the straight and narrow. So
well,
he's going to be
Joe is very
thrilled to see
kind.
this. I think he's going to be sad about Begs the Question, because that was that's one of his things. It's like, that's
Yeah, tell
wrong.
Joe. Yeah, that begs the question thing. I've thrown out the white flag on that. That's,
Are you urging him to let that go as well?
yeah, he might as well.
All right. Well, it's
It
fun.
probably doesn't come up that much.
It's fun to talk to you. It's been, I don't know, like 3 years or something. And when
I know.
you popped up on LinkedIn. That was a big thing. So thank you
Yeah,
very much. And
yeah.
it's also fun to see Ed Golden pop up as
Oh,
well.
there he is.
He was always fun. I'm sure he still is to talk to. He's a very easygoing dude. He likes
Yeah,
the music. He runs as you know, used to run a dance hall in Maine. Was it York, Maine? Somewhere up
Kittery.
Kittery, Maine, Kittery
Kittery.
Dance Hall with his
Yeah,
significant other, and he was always talking about music and events and going to see
yeah.
shows and stuff. Hope they're still doing that. I don't know how the pandemic affected that, but
Well,
Ed,
maybe
we both hope you're
maybe he
well.
can maybe he can tell us here. He's apparently
Yeah.
still watching. I'm wondering if Ed is still working. I haven't talked with Ed for quite a while.
Well, Ed, reach out and yes, you are. They are still open. That's good. The Kittery Dance Hall. It's pretty cool. I actually didn't I do a thing up there? Yeah, yeah. A college mate of mine, Laura or Lola Pope, decided that she was going to do these kind of events, listening parties where you'd get really, really high end stereo and a
Yeah,
brand new turntable, like
yeah,
a
yeah,
brand new record with super speakers. It'd be ultra audiophile, and you'd have a speaker come in and talk about the album. So we did David Bowie's Heroes, and Steve Morse, the Globe writer, came in and talked about Bowie and the album, and then people listened to the album on this super duper stereo. It was fun.
yeah, yeah. I had a dinner with Ed and his wife a couple of years ago now up in Kittery, and after dinner he took us to the dance hall just to show it off, and he was so proud. He was really into it.
As he should be. All right,
Absolutely.
Bob, I'm going to let you go. Ed, I'm going to say bye to you too. And I'm just thankful that we connected, Bob.
My pleasure.
Feel
Glad to.
free to feel free to share this, and I'm going to share it with Joe Matthew.
Excellent.
Is there anything you want to say to Joe?
Um,
Joe,
uh,
give me a call. Give me a
yeah,
jingle.
well,
Give me
yeah,
a
give me a
jingle.
call sometime. We haven't connected for like a year and a half, and
All right.
didn't even know Joe had left Boston for Washington until like 6 months after he did so. So that's what happens when you're retired and out of the loop.
Ed Golden says early Saturday and Sunday riding for Charlie Bergeron. So that's
I
what he's
see.
doing now. Wow.
Good. Well, good for him.
Cool. Okay, we'll talk soon.
Okay.
Take
Thank you.
care, Bob. This
Thank you, Ed. So long, Ed.